Fishy, fishy, fishy!
What's going on, fishy friends? Alright, thought we'd do a quick little update and see what's what. Let's think, what's changed? What am I doing differently down here? So, I'm trying something different on the mated pair of red turks that I've had for quite a while. A couple of people have suggested, and wisely suggested, maybe trying to cover off the front of the tank, so I've kind of isolated the fish. They're still not doing anything. I've gone about a week now without doing any water changes. I purposely dropped the water level down real low. The idea here is to hopefully get them thinking it is the period right before the rainy season in the Amazon. Oh, that's a lot of glare. The idea is that the water level will drop real low before the rains start, and then they would get hit with rainwater, which will be a lot colder than what they've been in. So, I'm going against everything I've ever done with this tank. Like I said, I haven't done water changes for about a week. I've left the water level real low, and once I go to do a water change, I'm going to drop the temp by a few degrees and see if that'll encourage any spawning out of these two again. Speaking of discus spawning, some of you might have noticed on Fishy Friday that these two had some eggs on the cone. I just pulled the cone because I had no wigglers and the eggs had fungused over and nothing looked like it was fertilized. I take that back. A couple of eggs looked like they could have been fertilized, but there was still no wigglers after about, I don't know. It might have been 96 hours or so after the eggs were laid. So by then, had any eggs been fertilized, I should have seen some viable wigglers. Besides the fact that the eggs were turning white, indicating that they weren't fertilized, I was also getting some fungus on the cone. So I pulled that. The next time I see eggs on the cone from these guys, once I get the cone back in there, I might try to pull the cone and artificially rear. I haven't quite yet decided on that, and I'll figure that out as the time comes. The new guys, the Tiger Turks, are doing good. I just dropped in a piece of beef heart, and looks like they devoured that already. That one in the corner is going after what I have a little scraps of left. But these guys are looking very nice. Everybody seems to have acclimated well. Everybody seems happy and content. And hopefully these guys will grow pretty nice for me and turn into some beautiful fish. The patterning on them is beautiful. Tiger Turk, as opposed to a typical red turquoise, instead of having stripes that go horizontally the length of the body, there's more vertical stripes. Now, I don't know if these are true Tiger Turks. That one there you can sort of see has more vertical in the blue on the body, whereas some of them are kind of just random and or spotted. Whether or not they're true Tiger Turks, I honestly don't care that much. What I care more about is that they are good, healthy discus. They are not a mutt and a combination of a pigeon blood and a non-pigeon blood. These are true red turquoise that have been selectively bred with particular patterning to try to get those vertical stripes as opposed to horizontal stripes. So, they're beautiful fish either way. What else? The rams over here in this tank are doing good. The tank's a little dirty. I am in need of some maintenance over here. I've had a hell of a week. I am trying to do some renovations around the house, as usual, trying to redo some stuff in the kitchen, and that has just taken up the majority of my time, so I haven't been able to focus on as much maintenance down here as I like to do. As a matter of fact, this week I've been coming down here and pretty much just doing water changes on these two discus tanks. Anything else, if I see a extreme buildup of detritus at the bottom of any tank, I'll try to vacuum it out. I think I vacuumed this one out the other day. And it's already getting pretty dirty. I don't know, this tank I haven't touched in a couple of days. I mean, it's not spotless, but it's not doing that bad either. Put big fish in a bare bottom tank and you end up seeing poop quite easily. People often ask, you know, the benefit of a bare bottom tank. The benefit of a bare bottom tank is that it's real easy to come in and clean all this stuff up. If I had some sand or gravel on the bottom of the tank here, I might not see those individual pieces that need to be removed, and they'll just sit there and rot away, and eventually enough of that sitting in the bottom of any tank is going to lead to an ammonia buildup and potentially some problems. What else? These two guys over here, they're the last two discus left in this tank. It is far too big of a tank for just two discus, but they're here. I had been concerned about some problems in this tank a while back. Slowly but surely, most of the inhibitants passed on, and I'm left with these two red Turks. That's a good example, actually, of the difference in the patterning. See how the stripes over here go horizontal? That is a standard red Turk. Now, if we compare that to the new Tiger Turks, you can see the difference in the patterning on the body. See how none of these guys really have anything that go nose to tail? It's more like spots instead of stripes, I guess. That one kind of has some horizontal stripage, but there's also vertical mixed in with it. So that is theoretically the difference between a Tiger Turquoise and a red turquoise discus. I'm sort of going off on tangents here. Where was I? Back to this tank. So, these two guys, I feel pretty confident that they're good and healthy. They've been the lone two occupants in this tank for quite a while. I'm still reluctant to add anything else to it yet, but sooner or later I'm going to have to combine these two fish with some others and just hope for the best. Unfortunately, one of the best recommendations some of the better known discus keepers and breeders and people with a lot more experience than me, the only suggestion I've seen them say, you know, I've gone and often asked people, how do you know for sure if your tank is healthy? Sometimes it's very easy to figure out if you have an illness or something affecting a fish in your tank or the whole tank. And other times you really don't quite know. You might have the slightest inkling that something might not be right, but you can't really definitively confirm that anything is wrong. Basically what people tell me is you got to pick a sacrificial fish. You take a fish that isn't your most prized possession, one that you know to be healthy from a different spawn, a different brood, a different tank, whatever you want to say, and you introduce that fish into the tank that you are questioning. If the tank has a problem, that healthy fish is unfortunately going to become sick, and hopefully it's something that is not irreparable. Hopefully it's not a serious enough disease where you just watch a fish die within an hour or two, and hopefully you can treat any issues that you might see. Now with discus, it's not going to be something like ick, or some of, I'll call them the more common problems, or problems often seen by beginners and stuff like that. Ick typically can't tolerate the higher temperatures that are required in a discus tank. As a matter of fact, one of the better treatments I've ever used to combat ick in any tank is nothing but a heat treatment, where, matter of fact, it was up in this tank up here with my Reminos. What I did to combat ick in this tank a while back was I slowly raised the temperature up to about 90 degrees, and I kept that temp there for 10 days after seeing the last white spot on a fish. And that is a tried and true method to get rid of ick. Ick is a parasite that has a very particular life cycle. There's a very short period of time when medicine can actually help with ick. If you're using medicine in a tank that's affected with ick and you still see white spots on a fish, that medicine isn't helping. The medicine can only kill the ick when it has fallen from the fish and when it is seeking a new host. Their life cycle is dependent on temperature. Raising that temperature speeds up that life cycle dramatically and really shortens the window when the ick can find a host. The heat also, I think, besides speeding up the life cycle, I think the heat also slows down ick itself, making it harder for it to actually go and latch onto a fish. So heat treatments have always worked very well for me as far as treating ick. But, like I said, ick is not something you might often see in a discus tank. You know, ick is very easy to diagnose, it's easy to spot, and it's easy to treat. It doesn't have to be detrimental as long as you catch it in time. Some of the other diseases that affect things like discus tanks are a little more difficult to spot, a little more difficult to diagnose, a little more difficult to treat. Parasitic problems, sometimes those are easy to tell based on the color of the fish's poop. Long white stringy feces usually indicates an internal parasite. Doesn't always, but more often than not. Then there's other things like, I think it's called hexatoma maybe? Hole in the head disease. Literally, the sensory pits in the fish's head will start eroding and literally turn into a giant hole in the head. Parasites like gill flukes, things like that are very difficult to spot until it's too late. Something like gill flukes is easy to diagnose after a fish has died if you put it under a microscope. But when the fish is alive and affected by it, it's very, very difficult to definitively confirm, okay, this is gill flukes, okay, this is an internal parasite, alright, it's, an external parasite, or whatever the case might be. So, like I said, the recommendations to me have been, if you question the health of a particular tank, one of the best ways to hopefully eradicate any fears is to take a sacrificial fish, a fish that you know to be healthy, place it into the tank that you have questions about, and hopefully everybody comes out okay. So we're getting to the point in this particular 55-gallon tank where one of these days I am going to have to put a sacrificial fish into here, and hopefully it all works out well. But for now, everything's good. That discus on the left is one of the very first discus I ever purchased from a local breeder. I had purchased 2 red Turks from somebody. It's actually the same guy who I ended up buying this mated pair from. But at the time, my funds wouldn't allow for me to get more than 2 fish. I didn't quite know too much about discus. I knew to find a local breeder. I didn't know much else yet. And against the advice of everyone, I started with just 2 fish. Those 2 did pretty well for quite a while. I'm honestly not sure if that second red Turk in there is one of the first 2 I purchased. Since buying those first 2, I had purchased a small batch from a local fish store to include 1 red Turk. Those were the fish that I think started the downfall in this tank, and it's also the reason why I'll never buy discus from a local fish store again. And so I'm not 100% sure if this smaller red Turk is one of those first 2 I bought or not. But that one definitely is one of the first discus I ever bought. I bought that at about, I don't know, 2.5, maybe 3 inches. Definitely no prize-winning discus. It's not huge, but it's grown pretty well. Its shape is decent. You know, definitely not my best fish, but not bad for the very first discus I ever bought, I suppose. That's about that. Hopefully I'll be able to move somebody else in there with them and not see any problems. Planet 55 is doing really well. There's some algae on the glass, but other than that, it's doing good. Planet 72, I gotta get in here and do some maintenance. I got that moneywort, I believe it is, floating along the top that needs to be pulled back. That Amazon sword needs to get trimmed up, and just need some general maintenance in here. The angelfish are doing good. I gotta get some light over here. These are the guys that I bought very, very young, very, very small, and they've grown quite big. I'm very impressed with the size that they've put on. These are fish I'm going to have to decide what I'm going to do with them soon too. If I'm going to add them potentially over in here. There are 2 angels in this tank already. Although right now it looks like it's just a planet tank with no fish. I don't see anybody. There are 2 angels in there that are a lot smaller than the rest, but maybe we'll add them in and hope for the best. Over here, the Epistogramma. It looks like the female's getting ready to spawn again. I'm purposely letting some of this algae collect on the glass and not going ahead and scrubbing that. I figure that's a good thing for fry in this tank to potentially graze on as time goes on. But the female looks like she has been claiming her spot back here in the cave again. I don't see her right now. Maybe she ended up laying some eggs today. But I'll keep updated on that. Alright guys, that's it for now. Comment, rate, subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you like what I'm doing. I suppose you can give me a thumbs down if you don't like it. If you do give me a thumbs down, let me know why. Tell me in the comments what you didn't like. Maybe I could change something. Maybe I don't realize I'm doing something people don't enjoy. Or maybe you just like giving thumbs downs on videos. I don't know. I know it happens. Alright guys, follow Rich's Fishes on Instagram, and I will talk to everybody soon. Later.